Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into something a little more esoteric. A world of crystal codes, cosmic eye contact, and ancient wisdom delivered through vague metaphor and unsolicited telepathy. We're diving into what it was really like to train in an Atlantean mystery school. Not the Instagram-filtered version with linen robes and perfect posture. No. This is the forgotten curriculum. The one buried under quartz, salt water, and 1,000 years of spiritual gaslighting. So before we dissolve our egos and rebirth through metaphorical fire, do me a favor, like the video and subscribe, but only if your higher self consents. And drop a comment letting me know where you're tuning in from and how many lifetimes you've already failed this class. Now, get comfortable, turn on a salt lamp, maybe light some ethically sourced myrrh, and let's take our first step together, right into the silent scream of sacred awakening. Congratulations, Initiate. You've been chosen. Probably. Or maybe it was a clerical error in the Akashic records. Either way, you wake up on the stone floor of something called the Temple of Remembering, even though you don't remember applying. Your back hurts. Your mouth tastes like copper and mystery tea. A woman made entirely of hummingbird feathers glides past you and whispers, "It begins." You nod because that seems polite, but you have absolutely no idea what's beginning. Then a gong sounds from somewhere both inside and outside your body. You are told to stand, but no one speaks. Somehow you just know. And if that sounds confusing, buckle up. It's only going to get worse. The first thing you notice is the quiet. Not peaceful quiet, ominous quiet. Like the walls are holding their breath to see if you'll fail. You're barefoot, in a linen garment that smells like ancient lavender and mild judgment. You shuffle into a long hallway lined with glowing glyphs. They're beautiful, pulsing, alive, also completely incomprehensible. A robed figure blocks your path. Their faces veiled, their hands are clasped, and their voice, when it finally breaks the silence, says only, "Name thy essence." You panic. You say Taylor. They stare. You try again. Seeker of truth. They nod solemnly and let you pass. You have no idea what just happened. Welcome to Atlantis. You're led to a stone chamber with walls made of vibrating crystal. You're told to sit. Not on a cushion, but on the cold floor, because apparently enlightenment starts in discomfort. Around you, other initiates are already meditating or pretending to. One is levitating. Another is crying quietly. A third is talking to a rock with deep emotional intimacy. You close your eyes and try to feel the pulse of the Earth Star chakra. You don't know where that is. You don't even know if that's real, but you nod like you've totally been here before. Hours pass, or maybe minutes. Time isn't linear in the temple. Eventually, a whisper travels through the room. The first veil has lifted. Everyone gasps. You feel nothing, absolutely nothing. But you smile anyway, because if you've learned anything in your first 12 confusing minutes of spiritual training, it's this: fake it till you transcend it. So you made it past the first silent stare down, survived the cryptic whispering, and now you're being ushered, no, floated, into the main hall of the Temple of Blinding Light. It's called that not just because of its brilliance, but because no one seems to understand how anything actually works here, and questions are discouraged. The architecture is breathtaking. Think towering quartz columns, echoing corridors, walls that hum softly when you breathe too loud, and a ceiling made entirely of reflective energy that somehow always reflects your worst thoughts. You squint, not because of the literal brightness, though there is a lot of that, but because you're trying to make sense of the hundreds of hooded figures moving silently like synchronized shadows. Everyone seems to know where they're going. You don't even know which direction is forward. One initiate brushes past you and mutters, "Follow the inner glyph." What glyph? Where? You stare at a wall and pretend to see it. Good. That's half the training here, acting confident while deeply cosmically lost. You're handed a scroll by a translucent being who smells like sage and moonlight. You try to ask what it says, but they float away mid-sentence. You unroll it and discover an elaborate series of instructions written in ancient Atlantean script. Beautiful, yes, but it might as well be a crossword puzzle from another dimension. Step 1. Realign the soul vector at third resonance. Step 2. Enter only when the pool reflects nothing. Step 3. Be less you. You nod. That seems reasonable. You look up and realize you're now alone. Somehow the entire group you arrived with has evaporated into sacred geometry, or maybe they just walked faster. The next room is circular, filled with light, but the light isn't coming from any source. It just is. At the center is what appears to be a floating disc, glowing faintly and spinning slowly. You approach it like it might ask you for ID. Someone coughs behind you and says, "Step only when the tone shifts to indigo." You freeze. What tone? What does indigo sound like? You pretend to hear it, wait 3 Mississippis, and step forward with all the confidence of someone internally screaming. The disc accepts you, probably. It doesn't explode. That's progress. You're greeted by your orientation guide, a tall being named Althis, whose eyes are closed at all times but somehow sees your thoughts. They wear robes made of liquid crystal and speak exclusively in paradox. The rules are simple, they say, but only once forgotten. You nod like this makes sense. It doesn't. They continue. You will eat only when the sun stands still. You will sleep when the stars align. You may not speak unless spoken to by silence. And you must greet each teacher as if they are your mirror, unless they are your shadow. Then you bow. You write none of this down. That would be sacrilege. You're supposed to remember it with your soul. Spoiler, your soul is not great with logistics. As you're led down another glowing hallway, a voice inside your head, not yours, says, "The rules are not made to be broken. They're made to break you." And honestly, that checks out. Because in the temple of blinding light, the real test isn't seeing clearly. It's navigating in the dark while pretending you're already enlightened. You came here seeking hidden wisdom, secrets of the stars, soul codes, the keys to higher dimensions, maybe even a few psychic upgrades if the vibes were right. What you didn't expect was to be handed a handmade broom made of reeds and given your first sacred task, sweeping sand, not metaphorical sand, actual, gritty, gets-in-everything sand. The courtyard is massive, the sand is endless, and apparently this is a spiritual practice. Your instructor, who has not blinked once since you arrived, tells you with great solemnity, all things begin in stillness. Stillness begins with the sweeping. Then he disappears, like they all do, mid-thought, mid-sentence, mid-plane of reality. You stand there, broom in hand, and wonder how much of this is symbolic and how much is just cruel. The other initiates are already sweeping like their karmic balance depends on it. One of them is doing it with tears in her eyes. Another hums what you think might be a frequency. You decide to imitate the one who looks most serene and start pushing sand in a small, meditative spiral. After 5 minutes, your arms ache, your back protests, and the serenity dissolves into sweaty self-doubt. You're not sure if you're sweeping correctly. You're not sure if there is a correct way. Every few moments, a hooded figure glides past, says nothing, and leaves behind the subtle feeling that you're being silently graded by a higher plane. Someone whispers that this is a test of humility. Someone else says the grains of sand represent unintegrated lifetimes. A third person claims the pattern you sweep reveals your current soul lesson. You stop listening, because the broom just snapped and now you're holding a stick and a clump of disappointment. No one helps. No one speaks. The only sound is the wind and the occasional soft chime that plays every time someone achieves a micro-awakening. You have yet to hear a chime that sounds like it's meant for you. Eventually, a robed teacher approaches and watches you silently for an uncomfortably long time. Then she says, "You are resisting the task." You want to say, "I'm literally doing the task," but you've already learned that logic is not welcome here. She continues, "The sand reflects your mind. You cannot clear it with force. You must invite it to settle." You nod as if this is helpful, then watch her float away without another word. You return to sweeping, this time slower, trying to invite the sand to obey. It doesn't, obviously. Hours pass, or maybe lifetimes. Your feet are blistered, your mouth is dry, your soul is uncertain. Just when you're about to question everything, a tiny breeze moves the sand into a perfect spiral. No one sees it but you. It's subtle, beautiful, completely accidental. And for one terrifying moment, you understand what they meant. It doesn't last. The wind shifts, ruins everything, and your lesson dissolves like it was never there. At the end of the day, your arms are shaking, your back is cooked, and your hair is now 40% sand. A bell rings. The sweeping is done. A teacher nods once. The work begins tomorrow, she says. You want to scream, "What was this then?" But you don't, because here in the mystery school everything is work, especially the parts they say are just preparation. At some point in your first week of initiation, it becomes painfully obvious. Everyone here glows, except you. Not metaphorically, not emotionally, actually glows, like moonlight trapped under their skin. The kind of glow that makes it look like they haven't eaten solid food in 6 years and live solely on starlight and smugness. You, on the other hand, resemble someone who just woke up in a lost and found pile of burlap and confusion. Your skin is dull. Your aura, assuming you have one, looks like it's still buffering. You try not to take it personally, but it's hard not to feel cosmically defective. During morning stillness, which is code for 2 hours of enforced silence and poorly disguised comparison, you sit cross-legged in the inner sanctum and try to vibrate at an acceptable frequency. It doesn't go well. The person next to you is levitating again. Another one is exhaling tiny golden orbs that float for a few seconds before vanishing into a higher plane. Someone across the circle emits a sound that makes nearby plants visibly perk up. You sneeze and accidentally knock over your water vessel. It echoes like failure. A nearby initiate turns and says softly, "Your field is dense." You thank them because it seems like the polite thing to do, even though you don't know what that means. Later, during lightwork practice, a misleading name since it mostly involves staring into a crystal until it responds, you start to panic. Your crystal does not respond. It does not pulse, change colour, or project a sacred geometry sigil into the air like your neighbour's apparently does. You press your palm to it. Nothing. You try humming at it. Still nothing. You mentally ask for its name. The only word you hear is no. You begin to suspect the crystal is judging you. After the session, a teacher named Lise approaches you. She glows so brightly it's hard to look directly at her. Her hair defies gravity, and her eyes appear to be made of liquid silver. She smiles with compassion that somehow still manages to feel condescending. "You're still processing," she says, placing a hand over your third eye. It tingles, then it itches, then it goes numb. She tells you not to worry. The light comes when the shadows surrender. You want to ask for clarification, but she's already turned to praise someone who just had a breakthrough involving a levitating tortoise and their inner child. That night, you sit alone in the glowless corner of your cell-turned-meditation chamber and wonder if you're broken. You try to do the breath of radiant alignment, but you keep forgetting which nostril starts the cycle. You chant your soul mantra, but it sounds like you're auditioning for a very nervous cult. Finally, you stop trying and just sit there, and in that silence, something very small happens. You feel warm, not enlightened, not elevated, just warm, like your body is still here, still trying, still real. You look down at your hands, and they don't glow, but they are steady. Of course, the next morning, someone announces that they transcended sleep and now dream with their eyes open. You just nod, because here in the mystery school, the glow isn't the goal, it's the side effect, but no one tells you that until it's too late to fake it. At first, you think you've made a mistake. You assumed there would be teachings here, actual lessons, spoken aloud, possibly with diagrams, or at least some vague hand gestures. But no. What you get is this. You stub your toe on a triangle-shaped stone, and a passing initiate whispers, "The geometry speaks." You're served cold root stew for the third meal in a row, and someone leans in to say, "This is how we remember to digest our resistance." You're not sure if they mean metaphorically or literally, but either way, your stomach hurts. The first lesson, apparently, is that everything is symbolic. including your discomfort. Especially your discomfort. No one will explain this outright. They'll just raise an eyebrow and say, "What is this moment teaching you?" You are assigned to scrub the ceremonial pool at dawn. It's cold. The brush is broken. You ask if there's a better tool and are told, "The water finds its own clarity when we stop resisting the grime." You try to argue that this sounds like a justification for doing chores barefoot in 30-degree weather, but the monk just smiles and points at a spiral carved into the wall. "The spiral is you," he says, which helps absolutely no one. Later that day, you trip during walking meditation and fall into a patch of thorns. While you quietly bleed into your robe, a fellow initiate crouches beside you and murmurs, "The rose teaches us that beauty is not without price." You nod, because you're too embarrassed to scream. That night, while applying salve made from crushed moon bark and vague regret, you realize this is the entire point. The curriculum here isn't taught, it's inflicted. Lessons arrive wrapped in failure, pain, and subtle sarcasm from the universe. You don't study symbols, you suffer them, and somehow that's the sacred process. Every moment here is a mirror. The broken broom, the silent teacher, the taste of a fruit you're told not to chew, just commune with. The gate that won't open unless you hum at the right pitch. Yes, really. You fail over and over, and each time someone nearby says, "Yes, good, it's working." You suspect this might be a cult, but you're in too deep now to be skeptical out loud. On your 4th day, you step barefoot onto a stone path designed in the shape of a snake. You didn't notice before, but now it's obvious. As you walk, each stone stings your soles, and for some reason, you start to cry. Not loudly, just enough for salt to mix with the air. A robed elder appears and places a hand on your back. "The path teaches you how to walk it," he says. Then he vanishes into what you're now calling the smug mist. You go to bed that night wondering if any of this is real, or if you're just assigning deep meaning to a series of frustrating, nonsensical tasks. And then you remember. That's the point. You are the meaning maker. The vessel, the lesson, the bruised toe, the cold stew, the spiral path. All of it is sacred. All of it is you. And you're starting to hate how that actually makes sense. At some point during your first week, you're led to your personal sanctuary, which is temple speak for the small, echo-filled cave you now call home. You were hoping for something serene, maybe with flowing curtains and a soft cot infused with stardust. What you get is a shallow stone cell dug into the side of a cliff, damp walls that sweat on you at night, and a single woven mat that smells like it's been through multiple lifetimes, and none of them good. There's a candle stub, a water bowl, and a pile of dreamstones that someone once tried to arrange in a spiral, then clearly gave up halfway through. This is your sacred space. It's supposed to reflect your inner terrain, which is appropriate because it feels like punishment for a sin you haven't remembered committing yet. The mat is not so much a bed as it is a warning, thin, brittle, and covered in ceremonial dust that no one has bothered to explain. You lie on it and feel every pebble underneath your spine. There is no pillow. You fold your robe under your head and immediately regret it. Ceremonial fabric was not made for comfort. You try to meditate, but the sound of distant moaning wind and your own cracking joints makes it feel more like slow-motion torture. Someone in the next cell is humming a sacred tone that vibrates through your wall and directly into your brainstem. Another person is crying, quietly, beautifully, spiritually. You hate them a little. There's no door to your room, just a heavy curtain made from woven reeds and existential dread. It doesn't block out sound. It doesn't block out light. It barely blocks out wind. When it flutters, it creates shadow shapes on the wall that sometimes look like snakes, sometimes like your childhood mistakes. You're told to face them with gratitude and silence. You try. Mostly, you fall asleep mid-gratitude and wake up with sand in your mouth. There's a scroll tacked to the wall. It says, "Solitude is the mirror of the soul." You stare at it each night before bed, wondering which enlightened ghost keeps writing these things, and if they've ever actually tried sleeping on stone. Your back is sore, your knees ache. You are told this is a natural part of spiritual recalibration. The body resists release, says a teacher who floats past your cave in the middle of the night, whispering through the wind like a bedtime threat. Dreams are no better. You expected visions, maybe messages from higher beings. What you get is a rotating nightmare of falling into bottomless wells and being scolded by glowing ancestors who say things like, "You're not listening hard enough." You wake up tired, emotionally confused, and somehow guiltier than when you went to sleep. Still, this is part of the process. You are being emptied. That's the word they use. Emptied of comfort, emptied of attachment, emptied of basic lumbar support. In theory, it sounds poetic. In practice, it's just cold. And the worst part, you're starting to suspect that the more uncomfortable you are, the more progress you're making. Which means, tonight, as you curl up on a mat made of woven suffering and regret, you might just be thriving. Chanting starts at sunrise. You know it's time when a massive conch shell is blown from somewhere you'll never locate, and the air vibrates with the sound of collective obligation. You stumble out of your cave, sore from sleeping on emotional lessons, and shuffle barefoot across cold stone toward the echo chamber known as the Hall of Harmonics. It's a circular room built for acoustics and ego dissolution. There are no chairs, no cushions, just concentric circles of robed initiates sitting like sacred dominoes, already humming with smug serenity. You take your place in the outer ring, where the spiritually unprepared are politely ignored. There are no instructions. There never are. You're simply expected to open your mouth and allow the ancient tones to emerge. Of course, no one tells you what those tones are. One teacher once said, "Let the vibration reveal itself." Another whispered, "You already know the sound. You just forgot." Someone else claimed you had to breathe through your light body and sing from your spinal fluid. You tried. It came out as a wheeze. That was 3 days ago. You've been faking it ever since. The chanting begins slowly, a low hum that grows like a fog rolling in. You hear deep guttural tones, high celestial wails, and one person whose voice sounds suspiciously like a didgeridoo. You try to match the pitch, you fail, you lower your voice, you raise it, you try to blend, you try to disappear. But no matter what you do, you still feel like a human squeaky toy in a room full of tuned instruments. After about 20 minutes, the group shifts into harmonics. You weren't warned. Now everyone's voice is vibrating in layers. Undertones, overtones, something called throat fractals. One woman appears to be channeling a bird. Another has tears running down her face. You, meanwhile, are just trying not to cough. At one point, the chant changes shape, like it morphs into a new sound that wasn't created by any one voice, but emerged from the collective. It's haunting, terrifying, beautiful. You accidentally stop singing and just listen. You feel something pull at the back of your neck. Your stomach flips. For a second, you're certain your soul just tried to leave the building. You panic, you chant louder, you force your way back into the frequency like someone crashing a wedding they weren't invited to. A teacher opens one eye and nods. You're not sure if that's approval or just her way of marking you for a future correction. The session lasts approximately forever. By the end, your throat is raw, your spine hurts, and your aura feels like it's been sandpapered by cosmic syllables. The final tone lingers in the air, high and crystalline, vibrating against your teeth like a judgmental tuning fork. Then silence. Real, suffocating silence. You're not allowed to leave until the silence lands. What that means is unclear, so you just sit there trying to look blissful and not deeply dehydrated. Eventually, someone rings a tiny bell. The session ends. No applause, no praise. Just a subtle knowing that you've shifted, or at least that's what they'll tell you. You stumble back to your cave, voice fried, ears ringing, heart confused. And even though you hated most of it, a small, horrible part of you thinks, maybe I needed that. You're told today is a purification ceremony, which sounds promising. You picture incense, warm water, maybe a gentle energy clearing. What you get is fire, actual, open flame, and a vat of pungent herbs that smells like fermented moss, regret, and something that definitely used to be alive. The courtyard is already filled with thick smoke when you arrive. A teacher waves you in with a bundle of smouldering plants, muttering in a dialect that sounds equal parts Atlantean and annoyed. "Let the toxins rise," he says. And for the next 2 hours, that's all you're allowed to do. You're instructed to disrobe, not entirely, just enough to make it emotionally uncomfortable, and stand in a circle with the other initiates. Everyone's pretending to be serene. No one is. The smoke stings your eyes, makes your throat tighten, and immediately clings to every pore like it's auditioning for a permanent stay. It doesn't smell like holiness. It smells like someone lit a compost heap on fire and whispered affirmations into it. You try to focus on your breath. All you get is a lungful of ancient ash and burned time. You cough. A teacher walks by and tells you the resistance is leaving your body. You want to say, "No, that's just my lung capacity." But you're too busy gagging to be witty. The purification ritual continues with a procession around a fire pit. You are handed a stick. It's symbolic. Everything here is symbolic. You are told to whisper your impurities into the stick before casting it into the flames. You panic. You're not sure what counts. Do intrusive thoughts qualify? How specific are we supposed to be? You whisper control issues and occasional sarcasm into your stick and toss it in. It immediately flares up, and someone behind you gasps like they just witnessed a spiritual breakthrough. You nod solemnly, as if that flare was on purpose. Then comes the smoke brushing. You kneel while an elder sweeps bundles of burning herbs over your head, chanting something that sounds like a curse disguised as a blessing. The smoke curls into your hair. It sizzles. You smell something burning. It's you. The purification smells like singed hair and marinated body odor. You're assured this is the sacred smell of rebirth. You suspect it's just what happens when spirituality is mixed with dry grass and flammable robes. After the brushing, you're led to the cooling circle, which is just a stone bench and a stern reminder not to talk. Everyone is blinking slowly, processing their personal infernos. One initiate is weeping softly. Another is staring into their palms like they've just discovered they were never real. You're trying not to scratch the part of your scalp that's still smoking. A teacher passes by and whispers, "You smell like release." You're too tired to figure out if it's a compliment. Later, in your cave, you try to rinse off the ceremonial scent. You fail. The smoke has entered your skin. Your robe smells like a regretful bonfire. Your hair has adopted the texture of spiritual straw. But as you sit, wrapped in the still-burning aroma of purification, something clicks. Maybe this whole thing isn't about comfort. Maybe it's about making peace with the mess, burnt edges, stink and all. Or maybe they just need better ventilation. Either way, you're purified now, allegedly. At some point, without warning or a proper goodbye to chewing, you're told you've entered a sacred fasting window. You blink. You were just getting used to the root stew and that one mossy leaf they keep calling bread. Now food is cancelled entirely. You're handed a thimble-sized cup of something bitter and murky and told, "This will sustain you." It doesn't. It tastes like sadness and boiled bark. You ask how long the fast will last. A teacher replies, "Until the hunger leaves you." You don't like the sound of that. Hunger has never voluntarily left you. It has to be escorted out by snacks and firm negotiation. The first day is rough. Your stomach growls so loud during silent sitting that a bird 3 trees away takes off in terror. You try to breathe through the discomfort, but your body keeps reminding you that breath isn't food, no matter how sacred the inhale. A fellow initiate sees your face and gently says, "Ah, the purge is beginning." You want to say, "No, the hangry is beginning." But instead, you smile and nod like your internal organs aren't starting a quiet rebellion. By day 2, you are told that your cravings are ego clinging to density. That's fine in theory, but right now, ego or not, you'd trade 3 past lives for a boiled potato. Someone next to you is doing ecstatic movement to alchemize their hunger into light. You try it. You almost faint. A teacher appears and offers a palmful of dried blue seeds. "Chew them slowly," she says, "so the memory of food can nourish you." You chew. It's like gnawing on Enlightenment's gravel driveway. You start to hallucinate around sunset. You think you see a banana with wings. You You follow it for a while before realizing it's just a leaf and your desperation wearing a costume. You sit under a tree, trying to merge with oneness, but the only thing you're merging with is low blood sugar. A nearby elder whispers, "You are becoming transparent." You hope that means spiritually. You're worried it might be literal. By day 3, you're told that your body is now feeding on light. This is, allegedly, a good thing. You feel light, yes, light-headed, light-boned. Light in the sense that your soul might drift out of your skin and float off toward the smell of someone else's incense-cooked root. Another initiate starts weeping and says they've never felt more pure. You think you're just feeling your organs shrink in slow motion. Either way, purity seems to involve a lot of dizziness. Then, something strange happens. You stop thinking about food, you stop counting hours. You just sit, not in bliss, not in suffering, just empty. And it's oddly peaceful, for a moment. Then a beetle walks past and you briefly wonder if it's edible. You're not proud of it, but at least you're honest. When the fast ends, you're offered 3 olives and a leaf on a stone plate. Someone weeps with gratitude. You try to cry, but you're too dehydrated. You chew slowly, pretending to savor the earth essence. It tastes like dirt, glorious, sacred dirt, the kind of dirt you earned. And somehow you get it now. You weren't fasting wrong, you were just spiritually undercooked. But you're learning, slowly, like fermentation, or famine with a lesson plan. Eventually, you're assigned a mentor. It sounds exciting. You imagine someone warm, encouraging, maybe a bit mystical, but ultimately helpful. Instead, you're greeted by a tall figure in midnight blue robes who neither confirms nor denies being your mentor. They simply appear beside you one morning as you attempt to align your breath with the rising sun and say, "When the stone becomes the question, the seeker is ready." You freeze. You look down at the rock near your foot. It doesn't seem to be asking anything. You glance at them for clarification. They just exhale, as if disappointed by your entire lineage. This becomes the theme of your mentorship. You ask something, anything, and receive either a cryptic riddle or a sigh so full of spiritual disappointment it could collapse a small star. On your second meeting, you try something simple. "What should I focus on today?" Your mentor nods solemnly and replies, "The center cannot hold what the edges have not grieved." You write it down like it means something, but later, while rereading it in your cave, you burst into tears for reasons you can't explain. Maybe it does mean something, or maybe you're just very, very tired. At meals, your mentor appears silently beside you. You attempt conversation, hoping for clarity. "Am I doing this right?" you whisper. They look up, eyes half-lidded with cosmic boredom, and say, "The path bends only for the one who believes it is straight." Then they drink their root broth and vanish into a nearby shadow. You're left chewing your boiled fern leaf, wondering if that was encouragement or just poetic gaslighting. Other initiates whisper that their mentors taught them breath techniques, meditation sequences, even glyph reading. You haven't been taught anything besides the vague emotional aftermath of sentences that sound like rejected fortune cookie drafts. You start wondering if you've been assigned the difficult mentor on purpose, as a challenge, or maybe as punishment, or maybe your mentor is a spiritual prank. But over time, a strange thing happens. You start thinking differently, not smarter, just wider. You stop asking questions expecting direct answers. You start letting the words hang in the air like incense. You notice how each riddle has a flavor, a tension, a doorway. You write them down like koans, at first mockingly, then reverently. You catch yourself sighing after hearing your own thoughts and think, "Oh no, it's happening." One afternoon, while walking alone in the garden of stone glyphs, your mentor appears beside you. Without greeting, they murmur, "You cannot hold truth with clenched fists." You're about to ask what that means when you realize you're clenching your fists. You release them, your breath softens, and for the first time you don't ask anything. You just walk beside them in silence. No riddles, no sighs, just two humans orbiting something neither of you is willing to define. You don't know what stage of the path you're on. You don't know if you've passed any invisible tests. But you know this, your mentor hasn't sighed at you in 3 days. And in this place, That might just be the highest compliment possible. They don't warn you about the mirror room. One day you're handed a small stone token carved with your soul glyph, still not sure what that means, and told, "It's time." You follow a silent initiate through several glowing corridors until you reach a sealed doorway that hums when you breathe near it. The initiate presses your glyph stone into the wall and the doorway melts open. You step inside. It's quiet. Too quiet, and far, far too reflective. The mirror room is exactly what it sounds like. Walls of polished obsidian stretch in all directions, perfectly reflective but unnervingly soft, like you're looking at your reflection remembering you. The light is ambient and sourceless. You don't see yourself once. You see yourself everywhere. Standing, sitting, blinking, fidgeting, flinching, from all angles. And that's before the mirrors begin to shift. They call it a truth chamber. You call it psychological collapse in 4 dimensions. At first, it seems harmless. You sit cross-legged in the center like you were trained to do. The reflections sit with you. But then, without warning, the mirrors begin to change. Not what they reflect, but how. One image of you looks angry, another afraid. One is smiling, but not kindly. One stares back with an expression you hope you've never made in public. You close your eyes. The room whispers, "No." You open them again, and now the reflections are moving independently. One version of you turns its back. Another mouths something you can't hear but somehow understand. You're not enough. You've never been enough. You pretend to be spiritual, but mostly just enjoy the aesthetic. You wanted enlightenment because you thought it would make you special. You feel sick. You try to breathe. One version of you mocks the breath. Exaggerated, theatrical. You hate them. You realize it's you. There's no clock in here. No way to measure how long it takes to unravel. Minutes? Hours? A lifetime of projected expectations. You remember a teacher once said, "The mirror room shows you what the world already endures from you." You thought it was poetic. Now it feels cruel. You try to speak, to ask for guidance, but your voice vanishes the moment it leaves your mouth, swallowed by the glass. Then comes the breakdown. Not dramatic, not loud, just internal collapse. You curl into yourself. Your reflections follow, all of them, a kaleidoscope of defeat. And right when you reach that fragile edge between sobbing and screaming, the room shifts again. The mirrors smooth, still, clear, silent. And there you are, just you, tired, human, breathing. That's all. You hear a single tone, gentle, warm, the sound of exhaling after years of holding it in. The door opens. No words, no explanation, just a quiet invitation to leave. As you step out, no one claps, no one congratulates you, but an elder passes by, glances at your face, and simply nods. You understand now. The mirror room wasn't there to show you what you are. It was there to show you everything you aren't. So what's left? That's the next lesson. But for now, you're raw, humbled, and cracked open in all the ways you secretly needed. Welcome to actual reflection. It happens without warning. You're sitting in the outer garden, trying not to fall asleep during your 4th hour of non-doing, when suddenly the air thickens. You blink, and there it is. An orb, floating about 3 feet in front of you. No sound, no entrance, just there, glowing, perfect, quietly condescending. You freeze. This is what everyone's been talking about for weeks. The floating lights, the guides, the consciousness spheres. You thought they were a metaphor, or exaggerated, or invented entirely by the hungrier initiates. But no, you're looking at one, and it's looking right back. The orb is not what you expected. You thought it would feel divine, comforting, enlightening. Instead, it feels like you just got called into your soul's performance review. It hovers silently, pulses once, then slowly rotates, as if scanning you from every angle. You sit up straighter, unsure if posture matters in energetic assessment. You offer a respectful nod. It doesn't nod back. Instead, it shifts colours, soft blue, then gold, then, disturbingly, a slow, unimpressed grey. You wonder if you're being graded. You assume the grey means try harder. You attempt to project humility, gratitude, worthiness. The orb does not seem moved. It starts to drift slowly around you. You turn with it, trying not to seem eager. It pauses near your left shoulder, pulses again, and you suddenly remember every unkind thought you've had since arriving. Every judgment. Every moment of fake chanting. Every time you questioned whether any of this meant anything. The orb doesn't say a word, but somehow you feel its disapproval. It's like being silently roasted by a sentient light bulb. A nearby initiate sees you and gasps. "It chose you," she whispers. "That's so sacred." You want to reply. It feels more like spiritual parole. But the orb is still watching, and you don't want to risk making things worse. You sit in stillness, you try to breathe, you attempt to radiate openness. The orb pulses green, then red, then grey again. You consider weeping, but that might be performative. You decide to just sit there and hope for the best. After several minutes, or hours, the orb begins to rise. Slowly, like it's disappointed, but willing to leave you alive. As it ascends, it emits a single, sharp chime. High-pitched, unsettling, final. Then it vanishes into the canopy above without so much as a goodbye. You sit in stunned silence. The garden feels emptier than before. You look around for confirmation. No one reacts. Just one elder in the distance who offers you a faint smirk and walks away. Later, you describe the orb encounter to your mentor. Their only response: "Good, it saw you." You wait for more. Nothing. Just that. You walk away, feeling like someone just read your diary and decided not to leave notes. You thought seeing an orb would mean achievement, a cosmic high five, some validation. Instead, it felt like being judged by a divine TSA agent with no interest in small talk. But somehow, you also feel lighter, seen. Uncomfortably, yes, but seen nonetheless. And in this place, being seen is one step closer to being real. From the moment you arrived, you've heard it non-stop. Raise your vibration. Align your vibration. Protect your vibration. It's printed on scrolls, whispered in corridors, scrawled into the sand during morning stillness. The entire curriculum seems to orbit around it, and yet, no one has actually explained what it is. You've asked, gently, cautiously. Every time, you're met with the same expression, a soft, knowing smile, followed by a response that somehow makes you feel both ignorant and unworthy. Vibration, they say, is felt, not taught. You nod, pretending that helped. It didn't. You've tried to reverse engineer it. You observe the glowy ones, the blissful ones, the ones who haven't blinked since the solstice. What are they doing differently? One breathes only through one nostril before sunrise. Another only drinks water infused with moonlight and disappointment. A third hums while walking in geometrical patterns and avoids eye contact with everyone. You mimic them. Nothing happens. You still feel like you. Heavy, confused, slightly bloated from the ceremonial root paste. One evening, during a group dialogue that is 98% monologue, someone says, "Low vibration attracts density." The entire room nods. You panic. Are you the density? Is everyone else nodding because they feel you bringing the frequency down? You try to make yourself lighter. Not physically, that ship has sailed, but emotionally. You try thinking pure thoughts. You try imagining sunlight. You try smiling at a beetle. Still nothing. You begin to suspect that vibration is just code for vibe, but cloaked in spiritual shame. During crystal alignment class, you're told to hold a rose quartz and match its frequency. You sit for 30 minutes trying to sync your soul to a rock. It doesn't work. The teacher walks past and says, "You're thinking too much." You stop thinking. They return and say, "Now you're not present." You give up. The quartz remains unbothered by your entire existential spiral. Your mentor doesn't help. When asked directly, they just sigh and say, "Vibration is what remains when the self stops interfering." Which sounds poetic until you realize they're just telling you to get out of your own way without offering any exit signs. Someone else suggests vibration is a state of being where you no longer need to understand vibration. This loops in your brain until it short circuits and you start chanting unintentionally. Eventually, you retreat to your cave and ask your reflection, glowless, confused, underfed, what vibration means. You don't answer. But you do notice something. When you stop trying, when you stop reaching, when you stop pretending you're not entirely lost, you feel calm. You feel still. You feel less fake. Is that vibration? You don't know. And honestly, you're starting to suspect that no one else does either. They're just better at disguising it. The next morning, someone says, "You feel different today." You thank them, but inside, you laugh. Because nothing changed. You just gave up trying to get it, and somehow that made you closer, or at least quieter, and maybe that's enough. Maybe vibration isn't a thing to find, but the sound you make when you finally stop forcing it. You've finally reached the part of your training syllabus, if you can call a tattered scroll with symbols and vague dread a syllabus, where you're introduced to astral travel. The phrase alone feels impressive, like a reward. Like after all the chanting, fasting, and emotional exfoliation, you finally get to do something cool. You imagine soaring through the cosmos, meeting spirit guides, maybe discovering a past life where you were important. Instead, you end up lying on your back in a freezing room, wrapped in a slightly damp meditation cloth, being told to release attachment to bodily sensation, while your left foot goes numb and your mind drifts toward dinner. The teacher, a man named Solin, who looks like he hasn't blinked since the Pleiadian Wars, instructs you to breathe through the veil. You don't know what the veil is. You assume it's metaphorical. He keeps saying things like, "Now rise," and "lift gently through the crown," while tapping a singing bowl that seems to trigger your anxiety more than your transcendence. The rest of the group is deathly still, as if they've already launched into the astral realm and left you behind. You, meanwhile, are very much still in your body, and your body has opinions. After about 20 minutes of energetic dislodging, you start to feel something. Not flight, not expansion, just a vague lightness. Your arms tingle, your mind drifts. Then suddenly you're above yourself, but not like the others described. You don't see a glowing tunnel or a sacred dolphin. You see yourself lying there, looking mildly constipated and unsure. The view is humiliating. You float approximately 3 feet up and hover there like a confused ghost, watching yourself fail at transcendence. And then the voices start. Not angels, not ancestors. Just your own inner monologue, now broadcast in stereo. "This is embarrassing," one part of you says. "Are we doing this right?" says another. You realize you're now floating above your body and your self-esteem. You see every insecure thought swirl around you like spiritual debris, every cringe memory, every self-doubt. It's not a celestial journey, it's an awkward, high-altitude intervention. You try to redirect. You imagine yourself flying higher, reaching the stars, meeting your soul pod. But your astral form is stubborn. It hovers. It loops. It shows you your own face from new angles, none of them flattering. You want to scream, "Take me somewhere else." But your mouth isn't involved anymore. You think about your taxes. You think about the way you used to mock people who did this. You think, "I don't think I'm ready." And the universe, in its quiet omniscience, seems to nod. Eventually, you return to your body. Gently, disappointingly, like slipping back into uncomfortable shoes. You open your eyes. The others are weeping, glowing, hugging invisible beings. You sit up, dazed. Solin looks at you and says, "Your field resisted travel." You nod, like that makes sense. Like you weren't just orbiting your imposter syndrome. But later, back in your cave, you realize something. You did leave. Maybe not far, maybe not elegantly, but you left your body and met something real, the part of you that's still scared, still healing, still trying. And maybe that's where all astral travel starts, not in stars, but just slightly above the version of you that's pretending. You're told the next stage of your training requires cognitive expansion through encoded wisdom. You're thrilled. Finally, something intellectual, something readable, something you might be good at. You're escorted through a series of underground corridors that smell like old bark, candle wax, and unspoken rules. Then you arrive. The secret library. That's what they call it. No real name, no plaque. Just a massive arched door sealed with a rotating glyph lock and an air of importance so thick you feel underdressed just standing there. Inside, it's exactly what you imagined. Floor-to-ceiling shelves of ancient texts, scrolls bound in thread made of gods know what, leather volumes that hum slightly when touched, symbols that shimmer and vanish when you squint. There's a desk, a candle, a stern-looking scribe who doesn't speak but makes you feel like you've already done something wrong. You approach with reverence, your hands folded, your mind open. "Which book may I read?" you whisper. The scribe doesn't look up. They hand you a slip of parchment that reads, "Access requires vibrational clearance." You laugh, softly. They don't. It turns out most of the books are off limits. You're allowed to look at the spines. You're allowed to walk in circles around the shelves. You're even allowed to sit in the reading nook and reflect upon the energy of stored knowing. But reading, actual reading, not yet. Your field is still too dense, one elder tells you, as if you're a spiritual potato. The texts aren't words, they're transmissions. If you force access, you'll disrupt their geometry. You ask if there's anything beginner level. The librarian raises one eyebrow and retrieves a tiny book titled Breath and the Folding of Time. You're told to read it without reading it. Let the pages impress their frequency upon your field, says the elder. So you sit, eyes open, staring at a book you're not flipping through, while trying to absorb knowledge by simply being near it. After 10 minutes, you feel nothing. After 20, you start to panic. Is everyone else downloading wisdom right now? Are they all quantum leaping through the Akashic Wi-Fi while you're just buffering? Eventually, you hear a sound. Not a voice, more like a hum, low and subtle. The book glows faintly. You gasp. The scribe looks up and shakes their head, slowly. The light fades. You're told you were too eager. You apologize to the book. Later, you learn that some initiates have been visiting the library for years without reading a single page. It's not about information, they say. It's about resonance. You nod like you understand. You do not. But part of you wants to. Desperately. You begin visiting the library every afternoon, sitting beside books you're not allowed to read, whispering apologies to volumes that have judged you, and hoping one day a spine will glow for you too. You realize the real lesson isn't about gaining knowledge. It's about learning how badly you want it, about sitting in the presence of wisdom and not grasping, about waiting, quietly, until the book decides you're ready. Because in this place, you don't read the book reads you. It starts as a quiet thought, just a whisper. What if I left? You don't mean forever, just a break, a pause. Maybe a few days outside the temple walls, a snack that isn't infused with cosmic intention, a night of sleep that doesn't involve spirit visitations and metaphorical fire. You don't even say it out loud, but the temple hears you. Oh, it hears you. At first, you tell yourself it's just fatigue. You're not quitting, you're realigning. You start scanning the stone corridors for an exit you've somehow never noticed. You pass the same doors you always do, none of which lead out. You ask a fellow initiate, gently, casually, has anyone ever left? They look at you as if you just asked to defile the sun altar. Leave? They whisper. You mean like, on purpose? You laugh, awkwardly. They do not. You approach an elder. Carefully, respectfully. You mention the word rest. The elder nods and says, rest is within. You clarify, you meant physical rest, maybe off-site, with cushions and fruit. They smile wider. Ah, the body speaks when the spirit resists. You realize this conversation is going nowhere, fast. Like most conversations here, it was a one-way trip to deeper confusion. Eventually, you make your move. At dawn, before the first conch shell, you pack a small satchel, a flask of moon water, a faded robe, 3 olives from your last purification meal. You move through the eastern corridor, hoping it leads to something resembling a gate. What you find instead is a circular hallway that brings you right back to where you started. You try the western wing. Same result. You find yourself looping, always returning, always watched. Then come the coincidences. A teacher finds you mid-escape and offers you tea for transitions. An elder passes by and says, "Some thresholds open only when the lesson is complete." You feel like the temple itself is winking at you. You sit under a tree and seriously wonder, is this place alive? Has it always known your thoughts? Is this why your dreams have been full of locked doors and giggling stone lions? You're not detained. No one chains you to the altar. There are no threats. Just a slow, creeping realization that there is no outside, not in the way you remembered. The longer you stay, the more the idea of leaving feels quaint, like trying to leave your own breath. The world beyond the walls starts to blur, like an old memory filtered through fog and incense. Eventually, you stop trying. You return to your cave. You eat the olives, slowly, as if they were never meant for escape, but for surrender. You lie on your mat and exhale. The walls don't laugh out loud, but you feel it. The temple is amused, not cruelly, just knowingly, like a parent watching a child try to hide behind a window pane. You never hear the word prison, but you do hear devotion, cycle, and return. And over time, you begin to understand. This isn't a place you leave. It's a place that leaves you when it's done. And until then, you belong to it, body, mind, and the part of your soul that once thought it could out-clever sacred geometry. You're told silence is essential, that it's not just the absence of sound, but the presence of everything that lives underneath it. You smile politely. You think, sure, that sounds poetic. Then they inform you that you're entering a 3-day vow of silence. No speaking, no writing, no gestures, no eye contact if you can help it. Just you, your thoughts, and a whole lot of air. It starts innocently. The first few hours feel like a reset, peaceful even. The world softens. You notice details, the rustle of leaves, the creak of stone under bare feet, the way your breath makes your ribs rise like cautious wings. You're proud of yourself. Look at me, you think. I'm so still, so aware, so spiritually disciplined. Then comes hour 5. That's when your brain realizes it has the stage. No distractions, no one to interrupt it. Just a silent amphitheater and full creative control. The thoughts start flooding in. Fast, loud, uninvited. You recall every awkward conversation you've ever had since childhood. You mentally replay a fight from 3 years ago and suddenly develop 3 better comebacks. You remember a weird comment someone made about your aura and decide they probably hate you. By hour 8, you've fully regressed. You sit in your cave, mouth sealed, eyes twitching, mentally rehearsing conversations that will never happen and arguments you've already lost. You try to meditate. Your mind replies with a highlight reel of your worst moments, set to a soundtrack of internal screaming. You try to walk it off. You head into the forest, hoping nature will soothe you. It doesn't. You see a tree and think, do trees judge? You trip on a root and spend 10 minutes overanalyzing whether it was symbolic. You start to suspect the silence is plotting against you. By day 2, you've reached what the elders call the purge of the noisy self. It's the part where all your unresolved fears, insecurities, and narratives bubble up like spiritual indigestion. You weep silently into your robe. You write imaginary letters to people who hurt you. You stare into puddles and wonder if the reflection is disappointed in your progress. And yet, underneath the chaos, something shifts. There's a pause, a real one. A stillness that isn't empty, but clear. You start noticing which thoughts are just loops, which fears are echoes. You begin to recognize the voice in your head as just that, a voice, not a truth, not a guide, just noise in a convincing costume. By the final morning, you don't want to speak, not out of obedience, but reverence. Words feel too sharp, too clumsy for what you found in the silence. Not enlightenment, not even peace, but a kind of space, a breath between your thoughts, a softness around your jagged edges. When the vow lifts, someone asks how it was. You smile, but say nothing, because anything you say would be a downgrade, and because the silence, for all its discomfort, finally introduced you to the part of you that doesn't need to speak to be real. You assumed it would be more dramatic, trumpets, maybe some glowing robes, a gathering of elders chanting your name in vibrato. Instead, you wake up one morning and find a single stone placed outside your cave door, black, smooth, warm, even though it's still before sunrise. You recognize it from the glyphs etched in the training hall, the initiation stone, the signal. You've been summoned. No one congratulates you. No one offers advice. You just know where to go. The lower chamber, the one sealed for the entirety of your training, the one that hums when you pass it. You arrive barefoot, robe wrapped tight around your uncertainty. A teacher greets you with a nod and gestures toward the threshold. "Leave the mind at the door," she says, then disappears into the shadows. You descend. There's no torchlight, just a pulsing glow from the walls themselves, as if the temple is breathing. The air is heavy, thick with incense and something less explainable, like memory or pressure. In the center of the room is a stone slab, surrounded by symbols you've never seen before, even in the secret library. You're instructed to sit. You do. Then the doors close behind you. No ceremony, no witnesses, just you, your thoughts, and something ancient watching from just beyond the visible. The breakdown doesn't come all at once. It arrives like a slow leak. First, your breath shortens. Then your spine aches. Then the memories start surfacing. Not the grand ones, the petty ones, the small lies, the masks, the moments you pretended to know, to care, to forgive. You feel your ego start to flail. It tells you this is unnecessary. It tries to narrate the moment, to protect you with a layer of performance. But the room doesn't allow performance. At some point, you start to sweat. Your hands tremble. You want to leave, but you can't move. The stone under you feels like it's pulling every falseness out through your spine. The air around you thickens with voices, familiar, distorted, sharp. You hear yourself being cruel, being afraid, being impressive for the wrong reasons. It's not dramatic. It's just true and unbearable. Then something inside you finally cracks, not breaks, cracks, like a shell giving way. You don't cry. You don't scream. You just stop pretending. There, in the stillness, stripped of performance, of ambition, of spiritual costume. You meet yourself. Not the aspirational version, the raw, uncertain, unedited you. And to your surprise, you don't recoil. You exhale. The room shifts. The light softens. A warmth wraps around you. Not from without, but from somewhere deeper than you knew you had access to. There's no booming voice. No revelation. Just a deep inner whisper that says, "Now we begin." When the doors open, hours or days later, no one greets you. No one claps. You walk back to your cave alone. But something's different, lighter. Like the part of you that always needed to be someone has stepped aside. You are not exalted. You are not transformed. You are just here, real, finally. And that apparently is what initiation actually means. It starts subtly. You're walking back from a twilight meditation, still half entangled in mantra residue, when you look up, and there it is, the moon. Not just present, but aware. It doesn't feel like you're looking at it. It feels like it's looking at you. Not metaphorically, not spiritually, literally. Like it knows your name and your emotional eating habits. You shrug it off as post-initiation exhaustion. Maybe your nervous system is still recalibrating. Maybe staring at candle flames for 3 weeks straight has made you a bit jumpy with light sources. But the feeling doesn't pass. In fact, it intensifies. You wake up in the middle of the night, open your eyes, and the moon is framed perfectly in the mouth of your cave, glowing, quiet, and completely unnerving. You roll over. You roll back. It's still there, watching. The others don't seem to notice. You try to mention it gently. The moon seems intense lately, doesn't it? Someone nods and whispers. She's listening more closely now. Another initiate responds with, "It's Scorpio season." Neither answer helps. You start tracking her. Not obsessively, just intently. She's always in the right place, perfectly positioned over ceremonies, hovering low during shadow work nights, dimming strategically during collective grief rituals. She's no longer a moon. She's a participant, a supervisor, maybe even an evaluator. One evening, after an unusually vivid dream where you argued with the moon about your fear of failure, you finally ask an elder, "Is the moon sentient here?" They look at you for a long, uncomfortable moment. Then they say, "You're asking the wrong question. That's it." That's all they give you. You go sit with your confusion and a bowl of root stew that tastes like betrayal. By now you've stopped trying to rationalize. You've accepted that the moon has a presence, and that presence is personal. You begin speaking to her, not out loud, but internally. You apologize for the times you ignored her. You thank her when your dreams feel manageable. You glare at her when your nightmares include interpretive dancing versions of your childhood wounds. She never responds directly, but things shift. Your dreams become clearer. Your emotions swell in rhythm. On full moons, you feel cracked open. On new moons, hollowed and rewired. It's not just astrology anymore. It's a relationship, one you didn't initiate, but one you're now very much in. You begin to notice she doesn't stare all the time, only when you're drifting, when you're about to perform instead of feel, when your spiritual practice turns into spiritual theatre. That's when she appears, quiet, massive and disappointed. And somehow, that gaze brings you back, not with shame, with honesty. You don't know if the moon actually sees you. Maybe she's just a mirror, maybe she's a guardian, maybe she's the temple's ceiling light with better PR, but either way, you've stopped ignoring her, because when the moon stares at you long enough, you eventually start asking better questions like, who am I when no one claps for me? Or, what if being seen is scarier than being ignored? Or simply, am I ready to stop hiding from myself? And under that silent, silver gaze, you realize, ready or not, she already knows. It happens so quietly, it almost feels like it didn't happen at all. You wake before sunrise, same as always. The temple hums with its usual pre-dawn stillness, but something's off. You can't name it at first. You perform your breath sequence. You rinse your face in moon-cooled water. You sit in silence, trying to locate the unease. Then you realize someone is missing, not just absent. Gone. The cave next to yours, once home to that soft-spoken initiate who always shared their herbs, is empty, cleared, not messily, neatly, as if they were never there. Their robe is folded and gone. No leftover bowls, no sandal prints. Even the scent of their healing balm has vanished. You pause. You listen. You wait for someone to mention it. No one does. You ask, carefully, casually, "Has anyone seen Sarah?" An initiate blinks, then shrugs. Cycles change. That's it. You press a bit. Did she complete her training? A pause. Then, we all complete in different ways. You don't like the sound of that. You think about asking an elder, but something stops you. It's not fear, it's knowing. Some questions here come with answers you aren't ready for, and in the temple, that's not poetic metaphor. That's survival instinct. You let the question dissolve into your tea. Later that day, during glyph contemplation, you notice others glancing at the empty spot where she used to sit. No one speaks. No one frowns. But the silence around her absence has density. It clings to corners. It watches. You realize the unspoken rule. When someone disappears, you don't chase the story. You honor the gap. You adjust the rhythm. You move on. Still, you can't help but wonder. Did she leave? Or was she taken? Did she graduate to some higher level? Was she cast out? Did she unravel in a chamber no one talks about? You remember the mirror room. You remember the nights you almost fled. You remember the look on her face 3 days ago, something tight behind her smile. You want to believe she's somewhere better, that she reached some inner threshold and was released with grace. But the silence around her is too curated, too intentional. It doesn't feel like celebration. It feels like protection, or perhaps warning. That night you hear a sound outside your cave. Light footsteps. You sit up, heart racing. A shadow passes, pauses, then continues. You wait for a voice, a whisper. Nothing. Just silence wrapping itself around your ribs, pulling tighter. In the days that follow, you think less about where she went and more about why no one speaks her name. It's not forgetfulness, it's reverence, or fear, or both. In a place where everything is symbol, even absence becomes sacred. Eventually you stop asking. Not because you don't care, but because you understand. Some paths don't end, they disappear. And not everything the temple teaches comes with context. Sometimes all you're given is a space where someone used to be, and the question of whether you'll follow or stay seated. You've spent weeks, maybe months, inside your cave. It was comforting at first, quiet, cool. A womb of stone where no one expected anything from you except presence and the occasional breakdown. But lately, the cave has changed. Or maybe you have. Either way, something has shifted. It starts one night when you're trying to sleep. You hear a sound, software thread thin, like wind slipping through a crack. But there is no wind, and there is no crack. You sit up, the sound stops. You lie back down. It returns, not quite a voice, not quite not a voice. You tell yourself it's imagination, echoes, acoustics, sleep deprivation. You light a bit of temple sage and laugh nervously into the dark. Get a grip, you whisper. The cave replies. Finally, you freeze. The word wasn't spoken aloud. It wasn't even quite a word. It was implied, felt, like your own nervous system had been used as a conduit. You tell yourself it was a dream. You tell yourself many things. But from that moment on, the cave is no longer just walls. It's a presence, not malevolent, not kind, just aware. Over the next few days, the whispers become more frequent, always at the edge of hearing. Fragments, not commands, just observations. Still hiding? You're late. Again? Sometimes it laughs. Not mockingly, not warmly, just amused. You try to meditate through it. The cave hums louder. You try to ignore it. The silence tightens. You begin to suspect the cave is reflecting your thoughts before you have them. You consider leaving. It whispers, then what? You consider asking for help. It replies, from who? You think about sleeping outside. That night, a rainstorm floods the outer paths. You try cleansing rituals, sound baths, crystals. The cave remains unimpressed. One night you scream at it, "What do you want from me?" The walls remain still, but your own voice echoes back far too long, far too low. You hear yourself say things you didn't mean to admit, and yet you stay. Because some part of you understands, this is the lesson. Not the chanting, not the fasting, not the mentors, this. Sitting in a stone room with no distractions and watching as every version of yourself you've tried to avoid starts pulling up a seat. The cave isn't haunted by spirits, it's haunted by you. Eventually, the whispers soften. They don't stop, but they shift. Less critical, less strange, more curious. That's new, one says when you manage to sit still without clenching your jaw. Closer, another murmurs as you notice your own breath instead of your doubts. You stop reacting. You start listening. You realize the cave has always been speaking. You were just too loud inside to hear it. And when you finally whisper back, tentative, humble, real, the cave doesn't reply, but it rests. And in that quiet, you feel something click inside you. Not knowledge, not closure, just a small, sacred silence that finally feels like home. It's placed in your hands without ceremony. No introduction, no lesson, just handed to you after morning stillness by an elder who says nothing except, "It's time." The object is small, cold, heavy. You study it, waiting for meaning to emerge from the weight. Is it a blade, a key, a symbol, a test? You don't know. You nod solemnly anyway, as if you understand the significance. You do not. You hold it for a long time, waiting for it to reveal its purpose. It doesn't. It just sits there, solid and unimpressed by your urgency. You bring it back to your cave, set it on your mat, and stare at it. It stares back. You expect visions, activation, even a mild hum. Nothing. It's just a thing. And yet it humbles you. You ask an initiate, carefully, without showing too much ignorance, if they've received a tool yet. They nod, vaguely. Years ago. You ask what it was for. They smile gently. That's not how it works. You resist the urge to scream. You begin experimenting. You hold it during meditation. No change. You press it to your forehead. Nothing. You whisper intentions into it. It remains emotionally unavailable. You consider using it to dig a trench just to prove it can do something. But you stop yourself. That feels sacrilegious. Or desperate. Possibly both. One night, you have a dream. The tool is glowing. You're surrounded by figures in robes, all pointing at it in silence. You think you've cracked it. You wake up and hold the tool. Wait for it to glow. It does not. You sigh so loudly that the cave echoes your defeat. You go to an elder and ask flatly, "What is this for?" They respond, "It's not about what it does. It's about what you do while holding it." You hate how vague that is, but it rings true in the way annoying truths often do, so you carry it. Everywhere. You sit with it during chanting. You walk the perimeter paths with it tucked into your robe. You sleep with it beside you like a stone companion. Slowly, something shifts. Not the tool, but you. You begin to notice the way your hands tremble less when it's there. The way your focus sharpens, not in grand revelation, but in subtle presence, like you're being watched or measured. It becomes a mirror of sorts. Not a literal one, but a reflective weight. You begin noticing when you lie. Your grip tightens. When you judge someone, you drop it. When your thoughts drift, it somehow feels heavier. It's not magic, not obviously, but it knows. Eventually, you stop asking what it's for. Not because you've figured it out, but because you realize the question was never the point. It's not a tool for fixing, building, or transforming. It's a tether, a responsibility, a reminder that sometimes the most sacred objects don't do anything. They just watch who you become while holding them. It starts like every other dream you've had since arriving. Strange symbols, echoing corridors, an overwhelming sense of being tested by geometry. But this one's different. In it, you're walking barefoot through an unfamiliar temple. Not the one you know. Not the one carved into the mountain with predictable echoes and reliable shadows. This temple is alive, breathing. The walls pulse with golden veins. The floor hums like it's reciting a poem you once knew but forgot mid-line. You wander through vast chambers lit by no source, yet perfectly illuminated. Columns rise like trees, bending slightly as if bowing to something behind you. You turn. No one's there. And yet, you feel followed, not hunted, witnessed. Like every thought you have in this dream is being archived by something very old and very quiet. You come to a central chamber, a round room, no door, no roof, just open sky above, stars flickering in patterns you don't recognize. In the center, a pool, perfectly still, but instead of your reflection, you see versions of yourself, laughing, breaking, healing, pretending, hiding. You try to step closer, but the moment you do, the pool goes black. All you hear is a voice, soft as breath and sharp as bone. Not yet. You wake up with your heart pounding, disoriented, expecting to find your cave ceiling above you. But you don't. You sit up, and you're in the temple from the dream. Same air, same walls, same living glow. You scramble upright, blinking, expecting the dream to shake off like fog. It doesn't. You walk to the chamber. It's there. You stare up. Same roofless dome. Same impossible stars. You step toward the pool. It's empty. You panic. You run down a corridor, only to find yourself circling back. You shout, and your voice echoes in a dialect you've never spoken. Nothing responds. No elders. No initiates. Just the quiet companionship of the structure itself. You sit, back pressed against a warm pillar, trying to slow your breathing. Eventually you stop resisting. You walk slowly, mindfully, as if being watched. You touch the walls, and they shiver. You hum a mantra, and the floor shifts beneath you, not crumbling, but realigning. You close your eyes and whisper, "What do you want me to see?" When you open them, a single glyph has appeared on the ground. You recognize it. It's the same symbol etched onto the tool you were given, the one no one would explain. You kneel, press your hand into it. The temple fades. You wake up, again, in your cave. For real this time. The air is cold. The walls are still. but the tool beside you is warm to the touch, and when you step outside, you find a new path carved into the stone, leading somewhere that wasn't there yesterday. You ask an elder about the dream. They don't ask which one. They just say, "You found the interior gate." You nod, though you don't understand. But something in your bones does. The temple from your dream may not exist in this world, but it lives inside you now, and that's somehow more real than anything your hands could touch. You're called to the inner courtyard at dawn. A bell rings 3 times. Not the ceremonial kind, the real kind, the one that signals an ordeal. You arrive, robe wrapped, teeth already aching from anticipation. The elder stands before you, holding a small bowl, empty. He hands it to you and says simply, "Your fast begins now." You nod, trying to appear serene. You've fasted before, intermittent, cleansing, juice-based. You figure you'll get a little dizzy, have a few vivid dreams, maybe cry once or twice. What you're not prepared for is the way this fast starts in the body, but doesn't stay there. The first day is predictable. Hunger, thirst, a slight edge of drama. You pretend to be noble. You sit straighter than usual. You meditate with extra intention. You pass your peers with the look of a soul ascending. But by midday, your brain starts fraying. You imagine bread, not fresh, just regular, stale, glorious bread. You dream of olives. Your stomach sounds like it's praying. By day 2, the real fasting begins. Not of food, but of comfort, of distraction, of identity. You're not allowed to speak, of course. Not allowed to read. Not allowed to write. Not allowed to even mentally rehearse a narrative. Let the hunger remove you, the elder said. And remove it does. You begin to unravel, not from starvation, but from emptiness. You don't know who you are without your routines, without your preferences, without your inner commentary. You feel like a radio stuck between stations, all static and no song. You don't want food anymore. You want familiarity. You want noise. You want someone to tell you this is working. But the silence says nothing. You try to distract yourself by cleaning your cave. It doesn't help. You try to recite a mantra. The words feel brittle. You sit and cry, not out of sadness, but confusion. You're grieving something. Yourself, maybe. Or the idea of yourself. You want someone to come and stop the fast. No one comes. On day 3, the hunger shifts. Not gone. Transformed. Your body still aches, but it's your mind that burns. You start remembering things. Strange things. Shame you'd buried. Regret you'd excused. You try to push it away, but there's nothing left in you to resist. You just sit there, hungry and bare, and let it all rise. That's when it happens. Not a vision, not a hallucination, just presence. A stillness so complete it feels like being held from the inside. Not loved, not praised, just seen, utterly. And in that seeing, the hunger shifts again. Into clarity. You realize it was never about food, it was about space. About removing every barrier until the part of you that's real could finally stretch its limbs. When the fast ends, you're given a single fig. You eat it slowly, reverently, like you're tasting existence for the first time. And you understand, the body is never the one that's starving. It's just the first to speak. The real hunger lives deeper. And now, you know how to listen. It doesn't happen with fanfare. No glowing sigils, no blindfolded ceremonies. Just a quiet moment after dusk, when an elder you barely know beckons you aside. You follow, expecting a chore. Instead, they hand you a folded cloth. Inside it, a glyph you've never seen before, inked in ash and bone. You look up, confused. The elder simply says, "Don't speak of it. Don't show it. You've been trusted." And then they leave. You sit there, cloth in hand, trying to feel honoured. You expected joy, gratitude, a sense of arrival. Instead, you feel dread. The glyph hums faintly in your hands, like it knows it doesn't belong out in the open. You tuck it away, heart thudding. You were desperate to be seen as worthy, but now you're the one holding something no one can explain and no one will help you carry. That night, you dream of fire, not the usual cleansing kind. Wildfire, consuming, symbols bursting into sparks. You wake in a sweat, hand still on the hidden glyph. You want to ask someone. You want to understand what you've been given, but you've also been told not to ask, not to share, so you don't. The silence is heavier than the secret itself. Over the next days, you become paranoid. Every glance feels loaded. Every moment of eye contact with another initiate makes you wonder, do they know? You start searching for clues in conversations, in wall carvings, in the way certain elders tilt their heads when they pass you. Nothing confirms or denies. The glyph remains mute. You begin to hate it. You try meditating with it, holding it close, asking it questions. It never answers, but your dreams keep shifting. More symbols, more burning. You start waking with the taste of iron on your tongue and the sense that your bones are rearranging in your sleep. You ask an elder if initiation is supposed to feel like being undone. They smile. Now it begins, they say. You wonder if that was an answer to your question, or to the one you didn't ask. One night, you can't take it anymore. You try to bury the cloth. You hike up the mountain under cover of night, dig a small hole with your hands, and place the glyph inside. You cover it with soil, say a prayer, and walk away. The next morning, it's back in your cave, folded neatly, clean, as if it never touched the earth. You sit beside it. You don't touch it. You just watch the way the air seems denser around it, the way it insists on being carried, even when you want to forget. You realize then, the point of being trusted with a secret isn't to know something, it's to become something, to see how you hold what you don't understand, to live with a weight no one else can lighten. That night, you don't dream. You just feel yourself changing, quietly, invisibly, irreversibly, because once you're trusted with sacred mystery, the real training doesn't end, it begins. You've seen the rituals dozens of times by now. Chants, breathwork, fire circles, movements choreographed by centuries of repetition. They've become part of your rhythm, predictable even. You perform them with presence, with intention, with the sort of respectful detachment that earns nods from elders and vague looks of approval from the more seasoned initiates. Until one night, during a lunar invocation, something changes. You're seated in the outer circle, palms open, eyes half closed in practiced stillness. A small group is at the center, new initiates in their first shared rite. The energy is gentle, humming, almost too subtle to catch. You're starting to drift inward when you hear it. A sound that doesn't belong, not a mantra, not a drumbeat, not a bell. A sob. You open your eyes slowly. One of the initiates, young, small, shaking, has broken down. Shoulders trembling, hands over their face. Not the graceful kind of crying you've seen in healing sessions. This is raw, messy, out loud, and no one stops them. No elder intervenes. No initiate guides them away. The ritual continues around them, as if their breakdown is part of the design. Which, of course, it is. You watch as their breath cracks and resets, over and over. You watch the other initiates beside them hold still, not in awkwardness, but in quiet reverence. You expect to feel pity, maybe discomfort, but instead you feel something shift inside you. Jealousy. Not cruel jealousy, not mean-spirited, just the ache of recognition. Because deep down you realize you've never allowed yourself that kind of release. You've been reverent, composed, high-functioning in your spirituality. But you've never sobbed in the middle of the sacred fire, letting your spine curve like a question mark while your soul screams silently through your skin. You watch this initiate fall apart, and you realize they're not failing. They're doing it right. That's when the tears come, your own, this time, silent, uninvited. They trickle down your face without drama, not because of pain, not even because of empathy, but because you finally understand something the rituals have been trying to teach you all along. This path isn't about mastery, it's about surrender. You've been trying to pass every test, interpret every symbol, perform every teaching with precision, but here, in front of you, is someone breaking open without any understanding of what it means, and somehow they are further along than you are, because the temple doesn't reward the polished, it honors the honest. You sit still, tears sliding down your cheeks, and let the rhythm of the ritual continue. You don't wipe them away, you don't analyze them, you let them fall, and as they do, you feel a layer of yourself peeling back, one you didn't even know you'd been wearing. After the ritual, no one mentions the crying, no one pulls the initiate aside. There is no debrief, just quiet, just knowing. And for the first time since you arrived, you stop trying to be enlightened. You just feel, and it's enough. It starts casually, as these things always do. You're sweeping the meditation hall, still bleary from a night of dreams shaped like riddles, when an elder passes by and says, "Tomorrow, you'll teach." Just like that. No context, no topic, no guidance. They keep walking. You pause, broom in midair, wondering if you heard correctly. You did. Your first reaction is pride. Finally. A sign that you've earned something. Progress. A subtle graduation. You imagine yourself speaking slowly, intentionally, your words rippling with layered truth and mystical cadence. Maybe this is the moment it all starts to make sense. That illusion lasts until about an hour later, when you sit down to decide what to say, and come up blank. You stare at the wall, hoping the glyphs will inspire you. They don't. You flip through your journal, searching for profound insights. All you find are half-finished thoughts, poetic ramblings, and increasingly chaotic notes from your time in the Whispering Cave. You start pacing. You wonder if panic is part of the lesson. By nightfall, the panic evolves into existential doubt. You've spent all this time doing the practices, meditating, chanting, fasting, listening. But if someone asked you what you've learned, really, what could you say? That silence gets louder before it softens? That sometimes your dreams are more honest than your waking life? That the moon watches you like a disappointed mother? You start listing everything you've been taught, then realize most of it can't be explained. It was felt, lived, dismantled into you. You try putting that into words and find yourself sounding like a poorly translated proverb. You wonder if you're the first person to feel like a spiritual imposter. Then you wonder if everyone feels like a spiritual imposter. You write that thought down. That one feels real. The next morning you arrive at the small gathering space. A few new initiates are waiting, wide-eyed and hopeful. You sit in front of them, heart thudding, mouth dry. You consider telling them about the glyph, the silence, the fire, the figure, all the things that broke you and all the things that didn't fix you, but instead you look at them and say, "I'm not sure what I've learned yet, but I know what I've felt." They don't flinch. They don't frown. They just wait. So you speak, not as a teacher, but as someone still unraveling. You talk about the time you couldn't cry and the moment you finally did. You talk about the questions that kept changing shape, the nights when silence felt like judgment, and the mornings when it became a friend. You admit that sometimes you still want to leave, that you're still afraid of being ordinary, that some part of you still wants gold stars from invisible gods. And they listen, not with reverence, with recognition. When it's over, no one claps. One of them nods, eyes wet. Another simply says, "Same." You realize, then, teaching isn't about having answers. It's about telling the truth while you're still looking for them. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough. You've always known there were animals on the grounds, birds nesting in the alcoves, lizards sunning themselves on the stone paths, the occasional owl perched on a glyph-laced archway, staring like it's been appointed headmistress of spiritual integrity. But they've never paid much attention to you, until now. It begins with the cat, or maybe it isn't a cat. You're not entirely sure. It looks like a cat, sleek, silver, lean in the way hieroglyphs are lean. It appears one afternoon while you're scrubbing the ceremonial bowls near the inner well. It doesn't meow. It just sits and stares. You pause. "Hello," you say. It blinks. You blink. That's it. It doesn't move. It doesn't leave. You finish your task. It follows you back to your cave. You don't invite it in. It comes anyway. From that day forward, it's always nearby, watching you meditate, curling around your ankles during walking contemplation, perched just outside the temple door when you emerge from dream work. It never demands affection. It just knows things. You start calling it the Observer. You don't know if that's its name, but it doesn't object. Then the others show up. A small dog, not quite fox, with ears too large for its head, begins appearing at your side whenever you're deep in emotional process. It doesn't do anything, just rests its chin on your knee when you're spiraling. A crow that seems to caw exactly when your thoughts turn dishonest starts shadowing your steps. A tortoise begins sunbathing near your cave entrance. You've never seen a tortoise move that quickly before, or look that judgmental. You begin to suspect that these aren't just animals. Or if they are, they're not just pets. They're part of the temple's nervous system, little extensions of awareness, familiar but not domestic. You try asking an elder if there's a reason they've suddenly attached themselves to you. They just smile and say, they come when you stop lying. You wonder what lies you've stopped telling. At first their presence is comforting, then it becomes confronting. The observer stares at you for hours, and you begin wondering if it's disappointed. The foxdog shows up right after your secret tantrums. The crow has a way of cocking its head when you think petty thoughts. The tortoise literally blocks your path one morning when you're about to skip group chanting because you don't feel inspired. You realize this is the temple's version of accountability. Eventually, you stop questioning them. You start welcoming them. You leave a little water out, share your figs. You speak to them, not out loud, but with your presence. They don't answer, but you feel more understood by them than by most humans. One night, you wake from a dream about your childhood and find the observer asleep on your chest. You don't move. You don't breathe too loudly. You just lie there, finally letting yourself be held in the simplest way. The temple pets aren't companions. They're reflections. They arrive when you're safe enough to be seen, and honest enough to stay that way. You've heard whispers about the archives since the beginning. Not dramatic ones, just fragments. She came back different. He never spoke of what he read. They left something there, and it didn't want to be left. You always imagined it was a room lined with scrolls and forgotten wisdom. Maybe you'd get to sit cross-legged on ancient cushions, absorbing truths no one else was allowed to know. You were eager. You were wrong. You're summoned at twilight. An elder hands you a small clay disc and says simply, "Take this to the archives. Present it at the threshold." You nod with the practiced calm of someone who's romanticized this moment, but your palms sweat. You find the entrance carved into the side of the mountain, small, unmarked, and pulsing faintly like a heartbeat in the stone. You place the disc against the door. It opens silently, revealing a long, narrow corridor that smells of time and secrets. You step in. The door closes behind you. At first, it's quiet, cool, dusty. You walk past shelves of tablets, glyphs, relics. You expect to be drawn to something glowing or gilded. Instead, you're drawn to a dull, unremarkable book wrapped in old cloth. You sit. You unwrap. You begin to read. And immediately, something shifts. The book doesn't teach. It reveals. Not new information. Old truths. Things you've always known in your bones but buried under politeness, distraction, and the desperate hunger to be good. It shows you every way you've bypassed discomfort in the name of peace. Every time you've used spirituality as a ladder instead of a mirror, it names you gently, but completely. You turn the page, and there's your face. Not literally, but symbolically. A pattern, a phrase, a rhythm so familiar you feel exposed. You keep reading. You stop breathing. You read more. Then you start crying, not from sadness, but from the realization that every answer you've ever sought has always lived just beneath the lies you were brave enough to keep telling. The archives don't offer clarity, they offer confrontation. And you weren't ready. You try to close the book. Your hands won't move. You try to stand. The air thickens. The room demands more. You realize now why people return shaken. The archives don't give you truths you can quote. They give you truths you can't unsee. You aren't being educated. You're being remembered. Eventually, you crawl out. You don't walk. You don't bow. You emerge like something molted. Like you left your skin on the floor and haven't quite grown a new one yet. An elder waits for you at the edge of the path. They don't ask what you saw. They just hand you a bowl of water. "You'll be quiet for a while," they say. You nod. They already know. You retreat to your cave, the book still clinging to your thoughts. You don't write. You don't speak. You just sit. You understand now why the archives are sacred, not because of what's stored there, but because of what they take from you in exchange. And what they return is not knowledge, it's responsibility. It starts during a serious teaching. One of the elders, stern, revered, full of that serene gravity you've always tried and failed to emulate, is lecturing on death, not metaphorical death, actual death, soul cycles, energetic dissolution, the ritual of return. You're seated cross-legged among other initiates, eyes lowered, posture perfect, heart open. Everything is silent. And then someone's stomach growls, loudly, obscenely. You try to suppress it. You really do. But something inside you cracks. You snort, then you choke, then you cover your mouth trying to pretend you're coughing. But it's too late. Laughter bursts from you like it's been held hostage for centuries. A ridiculous, breathless laugh. One part hysteria, one part freedom. Everyone stares. The elder pauses mid-sentence, looks directly at you, and smiles. Not a polite smile, not a forced, compassionate nod, a real one, deep, knowing, the kind that says, finally. No one scolds you, no one sends you to scrub glyphs or fast for purification. The teaching simply continues, and your laugh fades into the stones. But afterward, something lingers, not shame, not guilt, just curiosity. What was that? You start to notice it happening more. During chanting, your mind will drift somewhere absurd, like whether the temple cat is secretly judging your posture, and you'll chuckle. During breathwork, you'll remember that time you tried to align your crown chakra by standing on a rock like a wizard, and you'll smile. At first, you fear you're regressing, becoming irreverent, but then it clicks. You're not taking the practices less seriously. You're taking yourself less seriously. And that's an entirely different thing. For so long, you equated spirituality with solemnity, stillness, sacred poses, soft voices. But now, the more grounded you become, the more ridiculous everything starts to look. The way you used to over-articulate your intentions, the way you tried to perform inner peace while completely ignoring your inner chaos. The way you thought enlightenment meant becoming a stone statue with perfect diction and an allergy to joy. Laughter cracks through all that. You realize now, this path isn't just about depth, it's about lightness. Not lightness that floats above the work, but the kind that slips between the cracks of your most rigid identities and lets the dust out. The kind that turns spiritual constipation into spiritual digestion. The kind that reminds you the divine isn't always quiet. Sometimes it roars. The elders notice too. One gives you a bowl of soup and says, "You're finally digesting." You don't ask what they mean. You already know. You stop correcting others in study sessions. You stop waiting for the right moment to feel something. You start dancing in your cave when no one's looking. You talk to the temple pets like they're old friends. You giggle when the candle smoke spells weird shapes. You let yourself be human, not because you failed at being sacred, but because you finally understand they're the same thing. And weirdly, you start learning faster, because laughter doesn't weaken your connection. It opens it. You're cleaning the outer altar when an elder approaches you. No smile, no riddle, just this. It's time to return what isn't yours. Then they leave. That's it. At first, you assume it's literal, a tool, a robe. Did you accidentally keep a ceremonial bowl in your cave? You spend an hour inventorying your space like a monk with a guilt complex. Nothing seems out of place, but the feeling stays. The knowing. Not in your mind, somewhere behind your ribs. Like a thread has been tugged loose, and now you're unraveling quietly. You start asking inwardly, what did I take? Visions come, but not of theft, of absorption. You recall moments early on when you imitated others, took on their mannerisms, their tones, their beliefs without question. You remember claiming teachings you didn't understand yet, repeating phrases that weren't earned but sounded impressive. You remember wanting to belong so badly, you wore someone else's spiritual skin. That's what they meant. The thing you must return isn't physical. It's the identity you borrowed, the performance, the assumed wisdom, the voice that wasn't yours, even if it made people nod. You sit in silence for hours, holding nothing, saying nothing, until something inside you exhales. Not dramatically, just Let's go. You walk to the inner fire, bow, and whisper, I release what was never mine. The air feels different afterward, lighter, like the temple recognizes you again, not as a disciple, but as yourself. And weirdly, that feels like enough. You're halfway through morning silence when you feel it. Someone watching you. Not with judgment, but with familiarity. You open your eyes, expecting an elder. Instead, you see a figure standing just beyond the archway, not quite solid, not quite air. They look like someone you almost remember. A blur of features that stir something in your chest. Grief, maybe. Or longing. You blink. They're still there. They don't speak. They just nod, then walk away from the temple, toward the edge of the canyon path. You rise and follow, not because you're told to, but because some part of you has been waiting for this. The figure leads you down a slope no one uses. You walk in silence, not meditation silence, recognition silence, like being beside someone who once held your hand in another life. They stop near a crooked olive tree. Sit. So do you. Still no words. Instead, they place something on the ground between you, a small mirror, not polished, foggy around the edges. You hesitate, then look, and see not your reflection, but your younger self, the version that first arrived here. Hopeful, afraid, desperate to transform. You feel the tears before you know why. The visitor presses a hand to their heart, then disappears. No wind, no flourish, just gone. You sit there a long time, not in sadness, in awe, because sometimes guidance doesn't come from the future version of you. It comes from the part you abandoned on the way here, and when it returns, it asks only to be seen. You're called to the high gate just after dawn. An elder is waiting, staff in hand, gaze soft but steady. You expect instruction, maybe another lesson. Instead, they gesture toward the open path beyond the threshold. You may leave, they say. The words don't land right away. For months, or maybe years, you've waited for this moment. Imagined your return to the outside world with insight in your spine and light in your eyes. You thought it would feel like freedom. But now, standing here, it feels like grief. You step toward the gate but don't cross it. You look back. There's no farewell ceremony, no applause. The temple remains quiet, unmoved, as if your leaving was always part of the design, and maybe it was. You think of the figure, the glyph, the silence, the laughter. You think of how much you've let go, how much you still don't understand, and how every lesson felt more like an unmaking than an answer. You ask the elder, "What happens if I stay?" They shrug. Then you stay. And if I go, you take it with you. You realize then, you're not choosing between sacred and mundane. You're choosing how to carry what's now woven into you. You don't step through yet, not out of fear, but because you know, once you do, everything changes, not around you, in you, and you want to honor that. So you stand there a little longer and breathe. It happens without warning. One morning during water collection, an elder hands you a simple carved token. You recognize it instantly. The gate token, the one they give when a student has permission to leave the temple grounds for the first time. Your breath catches. For so long, you thought this moment would feel like triumph, freedom, a symbolic graduation. You pocket the token, nodding with calm, but your heart starts racing, not with excitement, but with confusion. You've spent so many moons longing for this moment, for the hills beyond the gates, for the forest trails that lead down to where real life, messy, fragrant, unpredictable life, still pulses. And now you can go. No escort, no ritual, just a nod from the elders and an unlocked path. So why can't you move? You go back to your cave and sit. You turn the token over in your palm. You remember the version of you who arrived here, hungry for meaning, desperate for clarity, tangled in ambition disguised as devotion. You remember looking at those gates as something to reach, a threshold of achievement, an exit from confusion. You thought once you were wise enough, strong enough, pure enough, they'd let you leave. But now you wonder, what if the real achievement isn't going through the gates, but realizing you no longer need them? Still, the call of the world pulls at you. The friends you left behind, the family who might still think of you, the language of your past that still lingers in your dreams. You want to know if you can carry this version of yourself, the quieter, stranger, more spacious one, into a world that never stopped spinning in your absence. And more than anything, you want to know if you can remember yourself outside the container that made you. You walk to the gate just before sunset, token in hand. The path beyond glows with golden dust, the kind that always made your heart ache with longing. You stand there a long time. The wind picks up. It smells of figs and fire, home and mystery. You don't walk through, not yet. Instead, you bow, not to the path beyond, but to the path behind, to the version of you who came here seeking transformation, to the version of you who now understands that leaving doesn't mean you've outgrown something. Sometimes it means you're finally ready to carry it. You'll step through tomorrow, or maybe not. You've already changed, and the gate, it turns out, was never locked. You wake the next morning, expecting stillness, closure, some ceremonial farewell or final blessing. But the air is thick, charged, not with reverence, with instruction. There's a note outside your cave. It isn't signed, just a sentence. You've completed your preparation. Now begin your work. You laugh, out loud. Preparation? That was the preparation. You think about everything you've endured, the fasting, the silence, the glyphs you couldn't read until they carved themselves into your bones. You thought the long nights and layered metaphors were the path. But no, they were just the door. You step outside, half expecting a new guide, a new ritual. Nothing. Just the daily rhythm. Sunlight across stone, the echo of feet in the corridor, the faint smell of herbs and ash. And yet, it feels entirely different. Like everything familiar is now watching you. You start noticing things. The way the elders look at you, not as a student, not even as a peer, but as a mirror. You hear more in the chants now. Patterns you missed. Questions hidden in sound. You realize the teachings never changed. You just weren't quiet enough to hear them. That day, 3 initiates approach you for help, not with words, with presence. They sit near you in the garden, trembling in that particular way people do when they're trying not to cry. You don't speak, you simply stay. And somehow, that's the work. Later, you're asked to tend the inner fire, alone, no instructions, just a bowl of cedar and the expectation you already know what's needed. You do. Not because you've memorized steps, but because your body remembers now. The training isn't stored in your mind. It's in your hands, your breath, your silence. It dawns on you that the real work isn't performed in robes or rituals. It's in how you sit when someone needs presence. How you move through doubt without collapsing. How you speak when no one's listening. How you listen when someone forgets how to speak. You thought you'd earn a title, a role. Instead, you've become something softer and far harder to define. And this is where it actually begins. You think it's a mistake at first. The elder hands you a bundle of cloth and says nothing. You unwrap it, expecting another text, another artifact, something ancient. But it's just bread. Flat, slightly warm. Wrapped beside it, a water skin. Ordinary. You wait for further instruction. There's someone in the lower grove, the elder says. Bring this. You've never been assigned delivery duty. It seems beneath all the training, the rituals, the initiations. But you nod. You take the bundle. You walk. It's midday. The sun is high. The path winds farther than you remember. You pass the old carving stone, the dry well, a tree that's always seemed to lean toward the temple as if it wants to listen. And finally, you see them. A woman, weathered, silent, sitting cross-legged beneath the canopy. She doesn't look up when you approach. Her breathing is slow, intentional. She's not a novice, not lost. You realize she's a former initiate. You sit across from her and place the bundle between you. Still, she doesn't move. You wait. Minutes stretch. Finally, she opens her eyes and meets yours. Why did you come? You hesitate. To bring you this. That's not why. You blink. The answer vanishes. She unwraps the cloth and begins to eat slowly, almost ritualistically. Then she passes you a piece. You accept. The bread is simple, dense, but something in it settles your chest, as if your lungs finally remember how to hold breath without guarding it. She finishes her meal and then says, "They sent you because I once did what you're doing now. And I forgot." Forgot what? That I was allowed to stop. You tilt your head. She smiles. The temple teaches devotion, but it doesn't always teach rest. There's a point where the work becomes your skin. You don't notice you're still striving, still proving. She leans back. They sent you not to serve me, but to see what it looks like when someone lets go of needing to be wise, or useful, or anything. The breeze carries a single leaf across the clearing. You don't speak again. You just sit with her. No thoughts of time. No longing to ask for more teachings. You don't feel small or powerful. Just present. Eventually, she stands, walks past you, leaves the grove. You sit there a while longer, watching light shift, listening to nothing, and for the first time in a long time, you don't feel like you need to return with answers. Just with presence. It doesn't come as a grand announcement. No bell, no gathered circle, just a quiet moment at dusk. You're tending to the herb garden, bare hands in cool soil, when an elder steps beside you. They don't say your name, they just offer the words, "You may stay, or you may go. The choice is yours now." And then they walk away. You sit back on your heels, let the dirt settle under your nails. For the first time, the phrase doesn't feel like a test. It doesn't feel like permission. It just is. You carry the moment with you into the evening. Not like a burden, like a folded note in your pocket. At dinner, you eat slowly. You catch the gaze of a newer initiate across the fire and offer a nod, not of mastery, but of shared mystery. Later, you wander the temple grounds. The glyphs feel different tonight, less like puzzles, more like memories. You don't pack, you don't stay up deciding, you sleep. In the morning, you walk the grounds one final time. Not to say goodbye, but to walk like the place is still inside you. Because it is. You remember the first time you stood in this courtyard, overwhelmed by the scale of everything you didn't know. You remember chanting until your throat was raw, fasting until your thoughts curled into corners, waiting for dreams that never came until they did. But what you remember most is the moment you stopped trying to become something and simply allowed yourself to be. And that's when the teachings became clear. Not as information, but as rhythm. Not as answers, but as silence. The temple didn't give you a voice. It gave you your own ears. You could leave. You could stay. But now you understand. Leaving isn't escape. Staying isn't safety. You're not meant to cling to one or run from the other. You're meant to choose because you're finally able to. You return to the courtyard where it all began. The temple cat is curled in the same spot. The fig tree in bloom again. An initiate nearby is trying to hold in tears. You don't interrupt. You don't offer guidance. You just breathe and smile. And in that still, soft moment, something within you settles. Not because the journey is over, but because you're not afraid of what comes next. Whether you walk through the gate or rest in the garden, you've remembered yourself. And that truly is enough. So, if you've stayed with me through this whole journey, thank you. You didn't have to, but you did. Let me know where in the world you've been listening from and whether you stayed or left something behind too. If you felt held in any part of this story, go ahead and hit the bell button. I'll be waiting at the next threshold, wherever that may be. Until then, rest well, and remember, nothing sacred ever really leaves you, not even this.